Welcome to Drive the Daf, clear, structured explanation of the daily Daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Pesachim Daf Pei Tes contains 3 short mishnayos and a number of sugyas. First, the Gemara is in the middle of a discussion about what happens when you have a group of people who brought a carbon Pesach already, but one of them was pasul. The Mishnah we have seen previously, you cannot replace it. There's no way to fix up that situation. The Gemara is in the middle of discussing possible solutions and why they are rejected. The next Mishnah will take us to the halachas of somebody who appoints one of his sons to to be a part of his carbon Pesach, but not other ones, but he doesn't specify which one. The next Mishnah discusses when you can withdraw from a carbon, and the third Mishnah on the daf will discuss when you can actually kick somebody out of the group, not out of being able to eat, but not being able to eat together with the rest of the group, but he has to be in a different place. So first of all, we're in the middle of this discussion. We had a case where you have 5 people who each brought a carbon Pesach. Then it was discovered that one of them was pasul, was a Baal Mum, and we're not sure which one it is. So we had seen that the halach is that there's no solution. They cannot bring a replacement, because those who are not chayav can't bring a replacement. That will be a pasul carbon, and it will be chulin in the azara. And the one who is chayav couldn't bring a potential shlamim, because it would not solve his chiyuv. So we have no solution for any of them. So the Gemara is trying to come up with scenarios to solve it. So the Gemara had said that we can't have them bring a carbon which is maybe a Pesach and maybe a Shlamim, and then make it Tanai if it's a Pesach. If I need a Pesach, it's a Pesach, if not it's a Shlamim, because the problem is that you'll be eating a bunch of Karbonei Shlamim with the rules of Carbon Pesach, which is less time. It's limited to less time of eating, and you're not allowed to minimize the eating times of a Kachim. So the Gemara now suggests, why don't you bring a Moiser HaPesach? The halach is that a carbon Pesach which was set aside as a carbon but wasn't used, or money which was set aside to be used to buy a carbon Pesach and is not used, you should take that money or that animal and bring it as what's called a Moiser HaPesach. It's a carbon Shlamim, but it has the halachos of a carbon Pesach, and that its eating is already minimized to the times that a carbon Pesach is allowed to be eaten. So the Gemara says, so let's do as follows. Let everybody who is in this group, who may or may not, who one of them has a psul, and therefore still has a chiyuv to bring a carbon, and we don't know who it is. So let each of them bring a carbon, and make it tonight. If I'm chayiv in a carbon Pesach, this is a carbon Pesach. If not, it's a Moiser Pesach. And then either way, its eating time is limited, and there's no problem the fact that we have to eat it with halachos of a Pesach, because that's its halachos anyway, even if it's not a Pesach. The Gemara says the problem is there's no such thing as creating a Moiser HaPesach in the first place. Moiser Pesach is only where you had a carbon Pesach that wasn't used. You can't be makdish an animal in the first place as a Moiser HaPesach. There's no such concept. So the Gemara says, all right, there's no such concept. So go find the real Moiser Pesach. Why don't each of these go find somebody who has a leftover animal and bring that and say, if I'm not chayiv, so then it's a Moiser Pesach, and if I am chayiv, this is my carbon Pesach that I'm bringing now. The Gemara says, you're right. Should be able to do that. The problem here is something else. The problem is we don't know whether or not to do smicha. A carbon Pesach doesn't require smicha, and if you do smicha on a carbon Pesach, you're using a kachim, and that's forbidden. On the other hand, if it's a Moiser Pesach, it does require smicha. So since we don't know what to do, we can't bring a suffix carbon like that. So the Gemara says, okay, I hear, but what if the 5 people are women? Then the halacha should be that you are allowed to, because women don't do smicha anyway. The Gemara says, you're right. The problem is something else. The problem is that we don't know how to put the blood in the mizbeach. A Moiser Pesach requires 2 placings on the 2 crosswise corners of the mizbeach, which gets blood on all 4 walls. But a carbon Pesach only requires 1 application. The Gemara says that's not a problem. We know that the halacha is that it works. If you put on only 1, it works also. So let's just bring it and put on only 1. What's the problem? The problem is really something else. The problem is we don't know whether we should pour the blood or throw the blood. The halacha is that a carbon Pesach's blood should be poured on the mizbeach, and a carbon shlamim should be thrown. Where says, what do you mean? B'diavad throwing works for all of them. B'diavad pouring works for all karbanos. So we should be able to just pour, and that's not a problem. Where says that's b'diavad. L'chadchila you can do that, and therefore l'chadchila there's no possible way to bring a carbon which will definitely be okay for any of these 5 people, and that is a conclusion of the Gemara. That is why there is no solution for these 5 people. We now begin the next Mishnah, which has somewhat of an odd-sounding case, and the Gemara will explain it. The Gemara says that there was a father who invited his children to come to Yerushalayim to bring the carbon Pesach, and he said, I'm appointing to be part of my Chabura, whichever child comes to Yerushalayim first. So the halacha is that the first one who gets Rosh Verubai, the head and the majority of the body inside the walls of Yerushalayim, he's the one who wins, and therefore the carbon is his, and he gives it, he's mezakeh, he can transfer it to everybody else. Gemara says this is very strange. What's going on over here? First of all, how does the first guy, the one who wins the race, how does he become the carbon is his? At the time of Shechita, we didn't know who it was. Second of all, how can he be mezakeh to everybody else? So the Gemara says, well, the reason that he wins is not because of Breira. It's not that it's revealed retroactively who was the one who the carbon was for all along. We don't necessarily hold it from Breira. The reason is that really the father intended to give all the sons. The way he set it up was that the one who gets there first will be the one who gets it, and then he transfers to everybody else. That's what he had in mind all along. And that's why all the other ones are really included as well, because the father's original understanding, what he originally meant to do, was to include everybody. Why did he do this? He wanted to teach his kids to run and be quick to do mitzvahs. The Gemara says there's a brayso that supports this. A brayso says over the case, and it adds that it actually happened was that the girls came first. And it shows that the girls are more mizares, they're more alacritous to run to do mitzvahs than the men are. And therefore the point of the entire story was to show zrizas. Our next Mishnah begins now, and it discusses until what time you can join a carbon Pesach and until what time you can withdraw from the carbon. So the Mishnah says as follows: you can join and withdraw until Shechita. Rabbi Shimon says until Zrika. The Gemara will explain which he's arguing on, drawing or withdrawing. And the Mishnah says, La'olam, forever you can join until all the kazesim are full, until there are as many people join as there are kazesim available in the flesh of the animal. So Gemara says, first of all, what is the word La'olam? You could always join. What are we adding? The Gemara says, it's coming to tell you that you can join even if an entire chabura is withdrawn and an entire chabura replaces it. That's okay. You don't have to have at least one person being part of the carbon the entire time. It's okay if there's a time at which there is nobody signed up, because an entire group signed up, the entire group withdrew, and somebody else comes in and replaces. That's fine. You can still join. The carbon is not a problem. The Gemara later will show that there is an opinion that holds that it is a problem, but this Mishnah does not hold that way. Now, what is the machlokes specifically? So the Gemara says the machlokes is not about joining. Joining, everybody agrees you have to join before Shechita, like the pasuk says, "B'michsas nefasha is techaisu al aseh." First, you have to have michsas nefasha. You have to have a numbering of the people that are joining it, and then only afterwards techaisu, which we have a drasha as from the word kus, which means to cut. Only afterwards can you slaughter the animal. You have to have whoever's signed up has to be signed up before the slaughtering. However, at what point can you still withdraw? So that's what the machlokes is. The Tanna Kama says you can withdraw only up till Shechita. After Shechita you're locked in. And Rav Shimon says no, you can join up until you can withdraw even up until Zrika. What's a machlokes? It's how you read the pasuk that says Im yemata bayis b'yos miseh. That's if there's too little in the house to fulfill a sheep. But the word Yemaid is read in a drasha manner as Yemaid, you're minimizing, you're removing somebody. And then when can you do that? Mihiyos miseh, until Mihiyos miseh. What's Mihiyos? So according to the Tanna Kama, that's until Michiyos, until only as long as it's alive. According to Reb Shimon, it's mehaviyase, as long as it's still going on, as long as its avoda is still being carried on, which means until the zrika, the application of the blood, the avoda is still being happened. At that point, you can still withdraw. The Gemara quotes a brayso which spells out this machlokes between Tanna Kama and Reb Shimon, clearly only over the zrikas adam and not over the time. Clearly up till zrikas adam, only about when you can withdraw, and not about when you can join. When you can join, everybody agrees you have to join by shechita. Okay, we now begin the next and final Mishnah of the Daf, and it introduces the topic of when the people that are joined together in a chabur are actually eating together. Okay, so we're after the shechita, we're all ready up to dividing it up. Can some of them tell one of them, go eat someplace else, we don't want you to eat here with us because of something you're doing? The Mishnah gives one case. The Gemara will have a question about a different case and try to prove it from the Mishnah, and then bring an incident involving that question along with some other proofs on the subject. So what's the case of our Mishnah? One of the people who was signed up to a carbon went and brought other people under him. I mean, he had others joined to his chelek, and therefore they're also involved in this carbon. So the halacha is, says the Mishnah, that the people in the initial group can tell the one guy who split his, who subdivided his chelek, you go take your piece of carbon somewhere else and eat it with your friends somewhere else. We don't want them here with us. We don't want you here with us. Go someplace else. This Mishnah obviously holds you're allowed to make a new chabura out of two existing chaburas. You could split it up. It's not an issue. And they have the right to force him to leave. So the Gemara has a question. The Gemara's question is, when in a regular chabura, nobody subdivided anything, but one of them eats much more and much faster than the other ones, and therefore he seems to be getting a much bigger chelik. He's eating and eating too fast. So the other ones want to tell him, take a piece and leave, go eat someplace else. That way he won't eat up more than his share. So the Gemara says that they could argue whether or not he's allowed to do that, meaning they could say to him, we did not sign up to have you here eating most of the carbon. And he would say, what do you mean? You knew who I am. You knew what I do. You accepted me in the group. It was almenah. It was on this condition that you accepted me. They will say to him, no, we accepted you because we needed somebody to eat some of the carbon. We didn't want it to get left over and become nicer, but we did not intend for you to take advantage of us in this way. So what's the halacha? Can they send him away or not? So the Gemara wants to bring a raya from our Mishnah. Our Mishnah, they have him sending away one guy who subdivided to a bunch of other people. That seems to show that they're sending him away because he's taking too much food. So here also, in our case, we should be able to send him away because he's taking too much food. The Gemara says, no, that the case of our Mishnah is different. There, the problem is that there are strangers. We don't want strangers in the group. We're uncomfortable with strangers. And even if they'll take the same amount of food, even if their representative takes an equal portion to everybody else in the initial group, and he subdivides it only among them, and doesn't give them any more, still we could say we don't want them eating together with us because they're strangers. Here, however, there's no stranger. The guy who's eating too much is part of the original group. There's no kind of stranger, so we don't know if there is necessarily an excuse to send him away. So the Gemara says, okay, let's bring another proof. We have a case which we saw earlier in the Masechta back on Daf Pevav of a waiter who accidentally ate a piece near the oven. He was working on the carbon and he ate a piece there. The halacha is you're not allowed to eat in two places. You can only eat in one. So if he started eating there, he can't eat anywhere else. So the Brisa there had said that if he's smart, he'll stand there and eat his entire share. And if the other people in the group are nice, they will come and sit next to him and eat with him over there instead of them eating in their place. So Gemara says, you see that they're only going to come there if they're nice. If they don't want to be nice, then they could box him out of the group by having him be near the oven and not together with them in their main suda. So you see that they can't keep somebody out. So here also they should be able to send away the one person who's eating too much. And says that's different. That guy was a waiter. They hired him. He was allowed to eat, but since they brought him in order to serve, he doesn't have a right to cause hardship to them. However, it's possible that in our case, he does have a right to cause hardship to them because he's an equal member of the group. He's not a waiter. He's not a waiter serving them in a subservient manner. Okay, the Gemara brings the third proof, and this one is another brisa that says if you have a group that one of them was eating too much, and again, it's almost exactly our case. One of them is eating too much. I have the right to say to him, take your piece and go somewhere else. Not only that, the Brisa adds, but they can even do that any Suda in the entire year. If you have a bunch of people who together joined funds and bought a Suda, and somebody's eating too much, they could kick him out, say, take a fair share, and leave. So Gemara says, what are you adding by saying that? Gemara says, well, it's a chiddush there, because there's no taina that we only brought you into the group because we needed to finish the carbon, we didn't want it to become nicer. We're talking about a regular Suda where there's no nicer issues, but still they could say that. They could say, we don't want you taking more food than the rest of us. The Gemara now says a different version of what the question here was. All along we've been assuming that it was one guy who was eating too much that they wanted to send away. This version says, no, that's not the issue. The issue was, when a chabur of people are dividing up, do they have to put all the food together in the center and each person takes and eats? Or can they split it up, each person gets his piece, and not anymore? You have a pre-designated amount that belongs to you. That was the original question. And on that, we brought the proof from this case, where we said that they can divide it up. This final proof that we brought applies there as well, since they can send the one guy away. Obviously, they could divide it up and give each one their individual share only in a case where one guy needs to be sent away. If there's no reason to send one away, everybody's equal, then they should leave it in the middle and have everybody share it equally, taking from the communal tray. The Gemara now brings an incident which is an exact reflection of the argument we've been having for most of the Yomad here. And the case was that Rav Huna Bar Yeshua had a meal together with Rav Papa, and every one piece of Rav Huna Bar Yeshua took Rav Papa took 4 pieces. So Rav Huna Brei Rav Yeshua said, get out of here, you're eating too much, go take your portion and go somewhere else. Now this was a regular meal, it was not a Korban Pesach. The Gemara says that they went through all of the proofs which we discussed on the daf so far. Each one they brought, and each one Rav Huna Brei Rav Yeshua brought that he has a right to send Rav Papa away, and Rav Papa answered, no, it's not a proof for all the reasons we gave. The last one he claimed was that you only have a right to send away in a case where it's a Korban Pesach, because you could say, I only needed you to join the group because I wanted to finish and have it not become no, you said, but in a regular meal, not. So on that, he brought the last proof we brought, where we said that it applies even in a regular meal, even all year. When he heard that, Rav Papa got up and he left. He followed the halacha and he split off and he went somewhere else. And Rav Huna Brei Rav Yeshua then joined with Ravina. This time, every piece that Rav Huna Brei Rav Yeshua ate, Ravina ate 8 pieces. So he said, I would prefer 100 Rav Papas and not 1 Ravina. Okay, now the Gemara brings a brisa. The brisa says that somebody who charges money for people to join his group, his Korban Pesach or the Korban Chagiga of the 14th of Nisan, which goes together with the Korban Pesach, any money that they give him becomes chulin. The implication here is that even if it was hektish money and it's being used to purchase a share of a Korban Pesach, which is hektish buying hektish, somehow the money goes to chulin. The Gemara will explain it on the next stuff. Now the Gemara brings another similar halacha in the end of the brisa there. The similar halacha is that if somebody sells a part of a korban, it doesn't work. What would be the situation? You have somebody has an extra korban oila or an extra korban shlamim. It's devoted, it was set aside to be his oila or his shlamim. It turns out he doesn't need it. He wants to sell to somebody else who needs it. So he sells it to him. The halacha is that the sale is invalid because you cannot have a different person use your korban. It has to be used for the person that it was originally designated for. Therefore, the sale is invalid. The Gemara says, though, that the money of the sale retains holiness, and it has to be given to the box, which is used to collect all extra money that's korban money, which we will use to buy korbanos tzibur. The Gemara says, why should the money have to go to the box? The sale is invalid. Nothing happened to that money. It has no kedusha. It should go back to the owner. The Gemara says, no, it's a knas. We punish the guy who tried to buy somebody else's korban. He's the one who caused the problems. We punish him by taking his money away and putting it into the box. Now the Brisa had said no matter what the amount is. Gemara says, what does that mean? No matter what the amount is. Gemara explains, even if it was extra, even if he overpaid on purpose in order to give the guy an extra gift, still that's part of the problem. We take that money away and it all goes into the box.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.